know that the sound quality in the video you're about to watch, and honestly the video we're watching, is not that good. Now most of the time what I'll do is I'll record on the computer, and then I'll record here, and then I'll mash them together. Right now I'm just recording on the camera because I'm lazy. As I stated in the video, apparently I'm very lazy. I only turned on one of my lights. Anyhow, so I recorded this entire video, and then I realized that my microphone had been tucked in between my vest and my shirt, so everything's kind of muffled and doesn't sound very good. And so I started to record the video again, and it just wasn't as good. I didn't do the whole elephant thing, which you will know what that is here in a little bit. I realize that now the whole elephant thing makes no sense to you. Anyhow, so I apologize for the sound quality of the coming video. Hopefully the next video will be much higher sound quality. Do let me know what you think of the next video. I got a new microphone. It's a little bit easier to use, and I just want to know how it sounds. Alright, thanks so much for watching. Back to the real video. Why, hello. Oh, that was weird. Very bad British accent there. Welcome to my review of The Soul That Remains. So, I've been planning on reviewing this for a long time. I finished it back in April, and I'm only just now reviewing it. Now, because I finished it a couple months ago, I have forgotten a couple of the things. I can't remember all of the plot details that I had intended to talk about, and I could have sat down, gone through the book, and then written them down again. I tried doing that, but I stopped. Because guess what? I am an incredibly lazy person. Like, you have no idea just how lazy I am. If I have to sit down and write something out, it's not going to get done. So I said, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to record, and hopefully I'll remember everything that I wanted to talk about. Now, this book was the first book I've ever read with the intention of doing a review. It's the first book I read planning on doing a dedicated review for it, which actually gave me a whole new perspective on reading it. It was kind of an interesting experience. I had read this book before, so maybe I'll have a different view than if it had been a book that I had never read, but, you know, let's get right into it. The things I want to go over in the book, or the things that I want to talk about, are plot, characters, setting, tone, writing style, and pacing. Now, I want to start off by reading what the back of the book says. It says, no, it does not say that. An alternate history, at a time when horses and hand tools were giving away to metal, steam, and war begins. Jera Grant wholeheartedly follows her brother Andrew in trying to right the wrongs around them. After all, they are kindred spirits. I just forgot how to read the word destined. Okay, we're going to pretend that didn't happen. After all, they are kindred spirits and destined to achieve great things. But closeness has its costs. From girlhood to womanhood, Jera Grant follows the threads of truth that stitch her life together. Resolute in doing right, she has an impact on any life that comes into contact with her. However, a tragedy convinces her to stand apart. Will she be able to determine her own purpose? First of all, let me say, stop writing black books like that. You told us nothing. Nothing. This is funny. Of all the, the things, this book is a good book. There are some things I didn't like about it, but this frustrates me more than anything else. I hate it. I'm sorry to anybody listening who loved this book. I'm sorry to the author, but you told us nothing. You didn't give us any information about the story, just that Jera Grant follows her brother in trying to right the wrongs, and she grows into a woman. I mean, that's nothing. Give me something that makes me want to read this book. Tell me something that happens. This is a very, very common thing on the backs of books or on inside flaps. They tell you nothing of the plot, and it's just like, I know what I want to do now. So, personal pet peeve rant over. Let's get into kind of the plot. Now, unfortunately, because I read this back in April, some of the later plot details have gone like fish out of my ears. Weird example, but we'll go with it. Basically, the book starts and the main focus is the Grant family. The Grant family consists of the eldest, Michael, then Tess and Lydia, the two middle daughters. I don't know which one is older. Then Andrew, who is right next to Jera. It starts with Jera's birth, actually, when Jera is born, and then goes on from there. Now, the Grant family lives on the family's estate. Old Grant is the grandfather. He's the character. He's actually pretty cool character in the book. Now, he decided that he shouldn't give both title and land to just one son, so he gives the oldest son, Jared, Jared's uncle, he gives her the title, and then Jared's father, Kelly, gets the land. They live in the country, on the country estate. We get a few adventures between Andrew and Jared as they're growing up. We see that Andrew tends to draw people to him. They meet Sir Dryden, Sir Rolf Dryden. He is, I believe he's their neighbor. He's an older gentleman, well, not older, but he's a gentleman who lives near their family farm. And then when the point in the book when it really starts to get going is when they have to go to the city. This is due to her grandfather, Old Grant's illness. I don't know what he has, but whatever he has to be in the city and closer to his doctors. So they move to the city. Now, I'll go more into this in the setting, and I might have actually already talked about it. This is my third attempt at recording this video, so if I repeat myself, I apologize. Very briefly, it is in, as the back of the book said, it's in an alternative history. Basically, they're in England with a war beginning across the Channel in France, the French Revolution. The colonies are mentioned in the book too, referring to the American colonies. However, it's not set in our history, it's an alternative history, so some details and stuff are different from what they would be if it was set in actual history. So, as the characters go, they go to the big city. Jared has to begin school. There's a bunch of different stuff that happens. And here's a possible slight plot spoiler, but I don't think so. And that is that they meet up with a group of friends, and I will find their names real quick. Their names are Thomas, William, Richard, James, and Francis. They're kind of almost a gang, not really, but that's the best word for them, who gathers around Andrew, and they decide they want to help the people across the Channel. In this world, there is a bigger group who are currently helping people escape from France to England. I don't know if it's actually called France in the book, I can't remember. But Andrew and Jared and their group of friends decide to also help. So they begin helping to rescue people across the Channel. They meet a boy named Jacques, who actually lives across the Channel, and begin helping to ferry people across. Now, of course, there we meet several other characters as well. We meet the cook and the housekeeper. We also meet their neighbor, Sir Arden. We hear of Jean Valgriz, something. He's the lawkeeper across the Channel. I'm not good at French names, you know. I don't know how to pronounce the French names. We try this. Jean Valgriz. Oh, that sounds better. No, that was horrible French accent. Anyhow, we hear of him. There are some other characters that we meet, but those are mainly the significant characters now. So as this goes on, a very important, significant event happens, which I will talk more about in the plot spoiler section of this video. We're just going to kind of skip over that for now. But mainly it focuses on Jared's growing up. It focuses, as the back of the book actually says. So kudos to the back of the book, because you actually did get one thing right. Well, no, you got it right, but you did explain one thing. It does go from Jared's journey from childhood to womanhood. It kind of talks about her growing up. And, well, I can't really tell you more without spoiling it. So it's interesting because it is a very slow burn plot. Now, I've never read Pride and Prejudice, and I've only listened to, like, the audio versions of Little Women, but it gives me those vibes, that sort of very gentle, slow plot. There are, like, events that happen that could be exciting and scary if they were written differently, but they're written in not kind of a scary and exciting way. And I'm not meaning that as a bad thing. They are written in a way that would be very accessible if you wanted to read this book to a young person, or if you're concerned for yourself, if you don't really like that sort of more fast-paced stuff. There's the ending of the book, climax, does have a little bit of fast-paced stuff, but again, it's written in a very, very calm and gentle way. And I'll talk about this more in tone, but it gave me, oddly enough, very Wind in the Willow vibes, which is strange because it has nothing at all to do with Wind in the Willows. Wind in the Willows. I don't think two stories could be more different, except for the fact that it occurs in England. Alright, you know what time it is. That's right, It's time for spoilers. This is my spoiler hat the entire time I'm wearing my hat. Know that spoilers will and might be in tow happening. If you see me with this hat on, that means that you could be spoiled for something in the book. Now, the main event that I talked about, I said there was a major event, and that is Andrew's death. So, the character of Andrew dies by trying to rescue somebody out in the channel. Now, this is one of my objections about the book, is the way in which his death occurs. Nobody's actually there. One character is there, but you hear about it later on, so it doesn't have as much of an impact as it could. The author does do a very good job of writing the different ways that different members of the family are grieving, and I did enjoy that. The character of Andrew didn't really resonate with me, so his death didn't really affect me that much, and my cat is chasing something, and I'm hoping it's not a bug, and I'm distracted. So it didn't really affect me that much, but here's something interesting. The first time I read this book, as soon as he died, I thought, oh, he's gonna come back. And he does. Now, when he comes back, granted, I didn't see it. He comes back as a side character, you know, burr, 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 and then I'm like, oh, ah! So I didn't, you know, that was well done. I didn't recognize that he was that side character. But his coming back did kind of frustrate me. I feel like that happens too often in books that are written towards young people. Let somebody die. Let people grieve. It's life. Life is hard. People die. And it kind of feels like when a character is brought back to life, it robs the audience of that grief they had. There's very rare instances where a character death and then their resurrection, or oh, guess what, they weren't really dead, is useful. But in a book like this, I really think that Andrew should have stayed dead. Toward the end of the book, Jera gets captured by the people on the other side of the channel, and her friends have to go and rescue her. Now, this is the part where I said it was kind of actiony, and it's slightly possibly more scary, and her brother kind of facilitates and helps out with that, but not really. When he comes back, he doesn't really affect the plot. And I would have preferred for him to have stayed dead and for his death to have... Another slight complaint is towards the end of the book, she marries Sir Rolf Dryden. Now, originally she doesn't marry him for romantic reasons. He is the last of his family, and his father wrote into the will that if he dies, then he has to get married, and he can't name a successor, or something weird like that. I don't remember exactly what. But basically, he marries Jera just so that his family will have an assurance of well, his mom and dad will have an assurance of means if he dies. But here's where I get a little frustrated with it. So at first it's just kind of that they don't like live together or anything, but then it comes out that it happened, and so they get married officially, and then they start living together, which is good. I mean, if you're married, it's fine. But when that occurs, Jera suddenly feels like this is her home and this is where she belongs. And throughout much of the book, we see how much Jera feels like an outsider. And then suddenly when she gets married, she finally feels like she belongs. And I would have preferred that to happen before the marriage. There's a lot of fiction which tells us, hey, guess what? You don't have a life unless you're married, which is totally not true. You know, a lot of fiction tells us that you have to get married to be of value. And that kind of frustrated me, and I could have read way more into it than any other people would have. Other people might have seen it as romantic, where I'm like, really? I'm not much of a romance person, to be honest. It was sweet, though. I mean, the marriage, and it was sweet. It was nice. Unfortunately, like I said, it's been since April since I read it, so there's plenty other plot things that happen, but what they are is all... Alright, spoiler section over. Alright, spoiler section is over, so welcome back if you skipped it. We are no longer in the spoilers of the plot. Unfortunately, there's plenty of other things that happened in the plot, but I can't tell you them because I don't remember, because it's all fish out of my ears, which is a weird metaphor, but I like it. Alright, moving on from plot to characters. Unfortunately, the characters are kind of where this book falls a little bit flat. Now, that just happens a lot when you have a book that is mainly from one person's perspective. The vast majority of this book is from Jera's perspective, and it's kind of hard to get depth in other characters when you only have one POV. The same thing happens in many, many other books. So I would say the characters that have the most personality are Jera, obviously, her grandfather, then her older brother Michael, and Andrew. The first time I read the book, I didn't really like Andrew very much. I felt like the book was telling me, oh, he's perfect and you should love him and he's amazing and he's great and he's everything a man should be. Well, as I read it back, I definitely saw more of hints towards his arrogance and the fact that, no, maybe he doesn't really know everything. So her sister's personalities are both basically, they like fashion. They're both super shallow, they like fashion, that's it. Her uncle, she has a couple meaningful conversations with him, but not much other, and then her parents are just her parents. Also, when she moves to the city, she meets the cook and a woman named Mrs. South, who's kind of the housekeeper. She's kind of also her mentor and helps her with schooling and stuff. Her older brother Michael, now he's got a pretty good, interesting personality, especially later on in the book. His main personality, though, is he likes finance and numbers. As far as, like, Sir Ralph Dryden, you get some of his past, some of his history. Personality-wise, there's just not a whole lot there. He's very one-dimensional. As far as the gang goes, which I don't really know any other name to call it, that is, you know, the group of friends who go and rescue people across the channel. I can tell you that Thomas, or William, one of those is the kind one. I don't even know what Richard does. James is the one who always complains, and then Francis is kind of like the thoughtful and one who thinks things through. Again, this is not necessarily a bad thing. I might have preferred, especially like with the gang of friends, for them to be pared down a little bit so that we can get more personality from each of them. And there are definitely like glimpses of their personality, and at least with the friends, I get this sense that the author knew a whole lot more about them, but we just don't find out. I get the sense that there's personality back there, we just don't see it. Maybe I would have liked a couple chapters or a little bit from their perspectives, or from Sir Ralph Dryden's perspective. But this is a very, very plot-driven book. I wouldn't call it a character-driven book at all. So if you like plot-driven books, this is definitely your book. I've been talking so much. By the way, do you like my new lighting system? I have a natural light. And I'm trying, I actually looked up how to do lighting. I've got myself, my key light, and then my other light. I'm trying to get the yellow tone out of my videos. I don't think it's working. I don't think my background helps at all. But let me know if you like it. Let me know if you've got any suggestions for getting rid of the yellow tone. And speaking of tone, let's talk about the tone of the book. I have a hard time describing this, and it's weird because as I was reading this book, I felt very much like I was reading The Wind in the Willows. And I think I mentioned this earlier. This book has nothing to do with The Wind in the Willows, other than the fact that it's in England. It's not even really the right time frame, but, you know, it gives me a very Wind in the Willows vibe. A very cozy, kind of gentle, maybe a winter evening vibe, or fall evening. Something that'd be fun to read, just together as a family. And I do think this is a book you could read with your family. As always, I would suggest reading it first yourself. Like I mentioned, the possibility that there's some stuff at the end that might be slightly scary. There's also maybe some more deep discussions that you could be having, but I think if you've got, especially young girls, it could be a very good book to read with them. Now, I do have a little bit of argument with the setting. I actually would not necessarily call this steampunk. Now, it's set in the Victorian era, I think, but there's not a lot of like steam engine stuff involved. Steam dishwashers mentioned. I think there's like a steam cow at one point, but not a lot of steam stuff been mentioned. But it is an alternative history, and I know I've already mentioned this. So it's set basically in England with France across the channel. The colonies are mentioned, which really confused me at first, but then I remembered, oh wait, alternative history, the colonies are America. So I do like the setting quite a bit. This is actually one of my favorite settings. I don't know if I would have used steampunk necessarily as a setting for it, or if I had, I would have made the steampunk elephants. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I would have made the I would have put steampunk elephants in the book, and they would have been like, steampunk elements more central to the story. I would have, I think a revolver's used, but I would have maybe used a couple more. Maybe I would have put a steam-powered boat or something. I think I would have just made the steampunk elements more. Did I say that again? Oh my goodness. I don't know what's wrong with me. I would have made it more steampunky. Let's move on. Let's talk about writing style. My cat just gave me a weird look. I really like this writing style. It is a very, very easy writing style to read. It's very smooth. You don't have to go back and be like, hey, wait, what? I really enjoy detailed writing, but many times an author will write a scene and describe something, and I'm like, oh, that just isn't what? I don't get it. I don't get it. But I think this is a very, very accessible writing style, and I think it's one that I could read a lot of through this perspective, through this writing style, and it'd be good. Pacing is our last topic, and for me, this is where it's a personality thing. This book is definitely a slow burn. The plot is very just like, I like me some action. I like me some fighting and goons and death. And this plot does have some action, but most of it's just a life story. It's just the story of somebody's life, which doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. And again, I think I've already mentioned this, but it gives me very like Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. What are the other words? Little Women. Little Women vibes. It's again, it feels like it's the story of somebody's life. That's not a bad thing. If you like slow burn, gentle plots that are just kind of like a happy trip down a river, well, this is the one for you. So, final thoughts here. If you like kind of life stories, slower, more easy plots, if you like Victorian settings, and if you like just a little bit of action smattered in here and there, then this might be the book for you. I definitely would suggest reading it. You can find it, of course, on Amazon and on Kindle. And yeah, let me know what you thought of this video, and let me know if you tried the book. Like, subscribe, and let me know what you think of the lighting. My camera's doing this weird thing where it's going geek, gook, geek, gook, and I don't know why, so, bye.